Hi guys, I wanted to make a quick video about some things I've been looking at and thinking recently. This report just came out. It says North Korea, US nuclear supercarrier that buried Osama bin Laden coming for Kim Jong-un. A US nuclear supercarrier that buried Osama bin Laden is set to enrage North Korea as it heads for the country's peninsula. It has been revealed. The USS Carl Vinson set sail for the Korean peninsula last week accompanied by guided missile destroyers and warships. The US Navy said the deployment marks the second time the Carl Vinson Strike Group will operate throughout the Indo-Pacific region under US Third Fleet's command and control. The strike group became the first in recent history to demonstrate the command and control construct called Third Fleet Forward, when units completed a 6-month deployment last year. The Navy added that the trip is part of a regularly scheduled deployment. The supercarrier's arrival date and mission period was not disclosed. So this USS Carl Vinson left to go to the Korean Peninsula last week. So I'm assuming it won't take that long for it to get there. The reason I bring up this report is because it's the, as it said in the report there, it's the carrier that they put Osama bin Laden on when they took him out and buried him at sea. And I just think that that draws parallels to this particular scene here. Now, I don't know if anyone else will agree or be able to see it the way I see it here, but I think that this light going across what I think is a symbolic depiction of the aircraft carrier that carried Osama bin Laden. I think that there is a J here. This light that goes across here makes a J. Now I can see that it could also look like an S, but I think because it's got the long line across here and then it goes down and joins and hooks around up here, it looks like a J. And I'm taking that to mean January. So if that is correct, then this is showing the movement of this aircraft carrier that has connections to Osama bin Laden moving in January, which, as I just read that report, it is. So I'm just going to skip forward a little bit. Now, if all those people represent rockets or missiles, then we know that that could definitely represent the aircraft carrier, particularly because it's moving and, as I mentioned, the representation, the connection to Osama bin Laden. What I wanted to point to next in this scene is something else. Now, we know that the eye movement and stuff in this video kind of indicates where we should be looking, where they may be putting clues. So I also think that's true of the things that they're holding. So these obviously are supposed to represent guns, rifles, and they're all pointing in this direction. So I just kept my eye line in this kind of general direction. At first I was looking all over thinking there must be something here in these clouds. They don't just put things in this video for no reason. Everything that they've put into this video has some sort of meaning, some way it can be interpreted, and I'm just looking around in this area up here, so let me just play it. So when I was keeping my eye up in this area here, you can see that all their sticks are pointing in this general direction. If I follow that direction with my mouse in as straight a line as I possibly can, it draws me to this area here. And what I see here, I don't know if you guys can see it as well, is a 3 and a 1. So if you compare this section of, like, behind the 3 and the 1, if you can see it there, behind this section is like a darker space, and if you compare that to the other darker space, none are so wide, and you don't see any of the other clouds or smoke in this scene representing a straight line. Only over here have you got a straight line and what seems to be the number 3 depicted here as well, and that says to me 31. And then obviously the scene before where I said the light looks like it's creating a J, and I think that this iceberg that they're on represents the USS Carl Vinson, and the connection to Osama bin Laden, having buried him at sea from that particular aircraft carrier. You've then got what appears to be a lunar eclipse in progress. And the reason I say it's a lunar eclipse is obviously because it's turning red. And that's how we get kind of like the blood moon effect. And when I look at the astrology map or the astronomy events that are going on, obviously we all know that the 31st of January, there's all these things happening with the moon. So we've got a full moon, and it's not only a full moon, but it's a super moon, as well as being a blue moon, plus a total lunar eclipse, which also makes it a blood moon. So that's all happening on the 31st of January. And in that scene there, we seem to be shown 31 over here, where all these guys are pointing, and then we've got the lunar eclipse taking place, turning the moon blood red. And I don't know if that signifies something happening on the 31st, but I do remember in relation to Carl Vinson, the Carl Vinson, USS Carl Vinson aircraft carrier, a while back, North Korea threatening, when it went over there in, I think it was June, threatening to destroy it and releasing a propaganda video that showed them destroying several of the US military's vehicles. And it showed, where is it here? Yeah, it shows here. So a stockpile of Pocosong missiles smashes into the US F-35 Raptor fighter jet and a nuclear-capable Lancer bomber in the computer-animated footage. It goes on to show a missile destroying the USS Carl Vinson, an impressive 103,000-ton aircraft carrier, which carried out drills with another vessel off of the North Korean coast in June. The video also shows the North Koreans' air power, showing at least 90 fixed-wing craft or wing aircraft and helicopters alongside the Korean Navy. So they have threatened to destroy it before. It seems to be on the move. If the interpretation from this Osama bin Laden scene is correct, and the light in the water makes a J, and the aircraft carrier is moving in January, and all these people represent missiles or rockets or whatever, which the USS Carl Vinson has, and this up here says 31, the same time as a lunar eclipse, which is happening on the 31st of January, then I don't know what that's signifying, if that's just another marker in this timeline, or if something's going to happen on that date. For example, something happening to the USS Carl Vinson, which kind of brings me just very quickly back to, where is it, this scene here. This scene here, where it appears that we have, I've just kind of focused on the background here, but we've got this kind of wave-like motion, which is in the clouds, which I believe represents a tsunami, because I also think that this bit of white cloud that they've put in here, and again, they don't just put things in this video for no reason, everything is done frame by frame, so they've taken their time. I don't know how many years they must have worked on this before they released it in 2012, but they've definitely encoded it with a lot of meaning, and I'm seeing what appears to be a representation of possibly the USS Carl Vinson and this tsunami wave that appears to be either moving away or moving toward. I really can't tell. That could also, represent a submarine coming out of the tsunami wave, which is another theory we're exploring. But it's worth depicting, particularly because it seems to be on top of the wave, and it has the same kind of imagery as the actual USS Carl Vinson does itself. Not sure if I got an image there. No, I don't have one there. The other thing I wanted to quickly talk about is, yes, again, this scene here. Keep coming back to it because it does appear to have significant meaning. What I'm thinking now is, obviously, I think this is representing an L, but also representing a 7, and I'm going to explain that. So the L, I think, stands for lunar, which would make sense. It's in the dark, whereas the solar calendar is kind of like in the light. So I'm seeing lunar with the L, and L is also the 12th letter of the alphabet, as we know, and it's kind of like in the dark. When you flip it around, I showed on one of my previous videos, just down here I can see it faintly, we have an A scratched into the ground, and when you flip the image upside down and you're seeing it from Obama's perspective, that would be A, and I believe that A represents number one in this interpretation, so that would be 1-7, and that's 17. And I thought that was referring to the year 2017. Obviously, that year has now passed, so looking at it again, I'm coming up with a different interpretation on this particular aspect, but one that has multiple layers. So bear in mind that I've said this is the lunar and lunar calendar and 12, and that would be the 12th month. And we also have 1 and 7, and that's just in this half of the frame. So I'm not even addressing this half yet, just this particular part. So when we look at the calendar that has JK first showed and has been a lot of help in relation to these videos, we have on January the 17th in the Gregorian calendar, it's also the beginning of the 12th lunar month. And when we look at the image again, that seems to be, if the A is down here scratched in very faint, and the 7, that's the 17, and then we've got the L for lunar, and then 12, and that seems to be, both of those numbers seem to correspond on the same date, January the 17th. So 17 and beginning of the 12th lunar month. I then want to move on to the second half, so this half over here, which I think represents a tsunami wave when facing, when looked at from Obama's perspective, a C when looked at from the perspective it is now, and also possibly a crescent moon as well. So if we're looking at that as a C, that would be the third letter of the alphabet, and if we're looking at this as an A for apple, that again would be just like the A down here, the first letter of the alphabet, which would be saying 31st. And then we have joined on to this part of the C, the number 15, represented by X and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So 15 and 31. And when we look at the calendar again, in the same month, January, we come to the end, and we've got, it's the 31st of January, and it's the 15th of the 12th lunar month. So I don't know if that is what that scene depicts, but it's not very, it's not very likely that the scene would have those representations, as in 17 and 12 and 31 and 15, and those numbers corresponding to exact days and together, so this part being the L and this part being the C. I really think we're living in the times, and obviously, as has been pointed out, it's the year of the dog, 2018, the year of Wu, which has been shown in the JK bug out video. I suggest you go watch it. That was a very good revelation. I was like, whoa, you know, I had to comment on that one. But there seems to be a lot of correlation here. So if we've got the USS Carl Vinson moving over in January, as a possible interpretation as it could be, and then we have the number 31 up here, and we've got a lunar eclipse going on where the moon turns blood red, and that's all happening on the 31st of January. It looks like markers. So, as I said, I don't know if things are going to happen on those days, because obviously they may just be, as I'm saying, markers in the timeline showing you maybe when things are going to kick off later in the next, couple of months, February, March, April. I haven't really discovered anything going on in May, but I'm going to keep looking. And then obviously the June representations are there as well. Just want to point one more thing out, as in my June video relating to the iPet goat video, I did a lot of talk about Gemini, and the Gemini sign I looked up just the other day is this, line across, 2 lines down, 1 line across, and that is the same. And I don't know if it has any relation to what's going on, but it's the same sign that the South Koreans are using in the 2018 Winter Olympics. So you got line across, 2 lines down, and you got line across again, and then what appears to be the representation of a star. And as we know, when these missiles go up, the flare that they give off at the bottom of the rocket often looks like a burning star. And I don't know if that has any significance to the overall picture, but I thought it was worth pointing out. I definitely feel that the LC scene here, being 1217 and 3115, are both represented this year on the 17th, which is the beginning of the 12th lunar month, and the 31st, which is the 15th day in the 12th lunar month. As I said, I believe those are markers. I don't know if anything's going to happen. Need to watch out for any news relating to the USS Carl Vinson. If that is what the Osama bin Laden scene represents, then that's obviously connected to whatever's gonna happen. And then obviously I've already talked about February, talked about March, JK's talked about April, and I think we're starting to get this now. I think because we're using the Gregorian and the lunar calendar as this video probably intended, at first we're just looking at one calendar and that didn't help at all. But ever since we started looking at this particular calendar, things have just started to click into place. And obviously the Wu and the Year of the Dog, those two things seem to stick out in the video as well. And I just want to say, I think we get it. I think we're getting them. We need to work faster though. We need to work faster because if we are correct, then we are in the timeline right now and time is running out. Which actually reminds me, just before I go, there is, I think it was it the Grammys or something? Golden Globes, that's it. The Golden Globes, their slogan this year, I don't know if any of you saw it, but I wanted to quickly bring it up. It's in relation to the whole sexual harassment that's begun in the workplace and the empowerment of women. But they brought up this slogan, which is Time's Up. And obviously that could be a direct reference to Time's Up for, sexual harassment in the workplace and, the unfair treatment of women. Or that could be because, as we believe, the Illuminati is involved in all of this kind of celebrity, media, entertainment kind of stuff. It could be an actual sign saying, time's up, that's it, it's time to begin. I really don't know, that one's just on the side, but I wanted to point it out because I thought it was interesting occurring at this kind of time frame we're looking at. And that's it, guys. You have a good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and God bless.